Da 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 da. What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. Have to give myself a little bit of a giggle. This world that I kind of hang out with, right? That I get myself to a point where I think I'm a little smarty pants, and I am not even close. Oh my goodness, did I get a little bit of a wake up call today? And that's the truth. And I'm just giggling at myself because, I really thought that maybe I was getting the hangs of things, that maybe I was able to make a little bit of movement, not only just for myself, but to put myself out there as the example, as the evidence for other people, right? As somebody that can kind of, I don't know, maybe teach, right? Or just in my conversation, you know, express the things that I've learned along the way. And today, just come to find that I am nowhere's close to being at that point, right? I was taught that, you always teach, you always pass on that information from the point where you're at in the moment, right? But then you come across information or you come across lessons in your life or experiences in your life that just kind of throw you for a loop and you go, oh my goodness, that was something I should have known years, years ago. And I've got to laugh at myself because what I wanted to talk about today was something I was just kind of delving into the topics for myself, just in, I don't know, I like to learn, I like to understand my emotions. I work in motivation and inspiration. I like to work within that idea of dynamic families because dynamic families are a great resource, especially if you're a student or a spectator or somebody who has a very curious mind. It's not always a safe place to be in dynamic families, but if you're stuck in one of those families, to use it as a learning platform, being a student and a spectator. And so that's what I've been doing these, oh, I don't know how many years now. I have to go and go back into my calendar, go back into my content to really get a good handle as to how long that I've been doing this. But this is going to be a never ending learning process for me. Hello, Tammy dear. Hello. It started with me getting up today. And I thought, that I wanted to, because I go to the parks, and in these parks, sometimes I see people doing the Tai Chi. And I love non impact exercise. I really do. And, I've come across the topic of Tai Chi before. I've actually even watched a few videos. But today I thought, you know what? I would really like to really try Tai Chi. If this is something, if I go to a park or if I'm going camping, when I'm more mature and I'm at camping spots, I'm connecting with Mother Nature, that it might be a great exercise, a great tool to help me stay limber in my maturing years. This is the idea that I came with, right? So I kind of cleared a little space for myself in this area. I've got a good maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet by 10 feet area that I can work in. And I pushed my chair off to the side and I started watching some videos because if I'm going to go do this and practice this crap, because of course you're not going to be an expert, it's a learning process, right? That I should apply myself so I don't look like a dummy when people see me out in the park. I don't want to look like a chicken with my head chopped off as I'm trying to do this and be somebody's entertainment. If that's the case, that's the case. I'm going to do it anyway, but I would much prefer to have a little bit of, I don't know, skill in the process and actually to have an idea if it would be something that I would enjoy, right? Tammy, have you ever done Tai Chi? Have you ever done Tai Chi? So I put on some videos. I have my little spot here set out. I don't normally do my exercising. Have you thought about doing Isn't that a coincidence, Tammy? For sure it is. It looks super interesting and it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be really easy, but it's kind of a dance in a way. It is got so much balancing involved and I'm going to have to expand in that a little bit in a few minutes, but I did find it very enjoyable. Like I said, I don't exercise normally if I'm in the living room. Sometimes I do a little bit of dancing on my own if a good tune comes on, but other than that, I'm not a big let's do the push-ups and sit-ups and right. That's just not me. I like to just do my walking, my swimming, my bike riding, right? And my hiking, my trails. But today I thought, you know what? This might be a really nice thing for me. Beneficial for my heart, beneficial for my life and health, and beneficial for my mindset. And it would keep me active. And when I'm out in the provincial parks all by myself, right? It's a great way to entertain myself, especially if I have a beautiful lakefront landscape in front of me and looking at the sunset or the sunrise to be able to do my Tai Chi in that connection with Mother Nature. So I turned on my videos, right? And I had my little workspace set up here and I just couldn't get the hang of it, in these well, I guess we'll get into that because it was kind of like a chain effect for me today, right? That I got into it. I found a couple of really good teachers online and I started Tai Chi today, right? And at first, it's the lessons of understanding what Tai Chi is really, right? And what the idea is to keep in mind when you're doing Tai Chi, it's a give and a take. So it makes it really easy, and there's no right way or wrong way to do it. But I kind of found that there is a wrong way to do it because as I was doing the Tai Chi and I was following the instructions and I thought it was pretty cool, right? And I was having some fun with it and I understand that it's going to take some time. So if I can put 20 minutes or a half an hour in the morning, right? That maybe eventually I'll get pretty good at it. That even in this moment, I could go to the park and do a few moves. But in that practice of Tai Chi, and doing the give and the take, right? I had to learn to balance myself, right? Because I kind of thought I was in that Karate Kid, that with the knee up. I was getting a little bit brave, right? And I noticed that my balance was totally off, and I went, "Oh my goodness, Cindy! If you're going to do Tai Chi, you better practice the balance of it, right?" And so I stopped my video and I just kept doing these karate, lifting my leg up in the air and doing these Karate Kid moves. But I kept stumbling over myself, and one of my favorite crystals I knocked into my shelf. And this is one of my favorite crystals, and I dropped it on the floor and a big chunk came off of it. It's still beautiful. It's still beautiful. I still love it, but I was so sad. I got my broom out and I got my dustpan out, and it was only a few minutes ago when I turned around and actually looked at my shelf that I had to say my gratefuls. Like I had to say my gratefuls. I love my crystal, but I don't love them as much as I love my statues or I love my birch tree vase. And those are pretty delicate. They're skinny. They don't balance well on their own. And I knocked into that shelf and I knocked the crystal down on the floor. And not my favorite piece. I love that's one of my favorite pieces, but it's not the favorite piece. So I had to take a moment to say my gratefuls. Thank you so much that it was the crystal, right? I probably have over 100 crystals. You can't see them all. I have a few that are visible, but for the most part, my crystals are in trays and stuff. They're in spots that are not in the frame of my camera. So if I lost that crystal, it wouldn't be the absolute end of the world. And to tell you the truth, if I lost my statues, I would feel really bad for probably 15 minutes, and I would have to fill up that space with something else so that I wouldn't be reminded constantly that I broke my favorite little. There was actually three of them at one time, but I know how delicate they are, and they wobble and then they fall over. One of them I had to glue the hat back on, and then the other one shattered so badly it was not repairable, and so I now have only two of them instead of three of them. But in that process, I go, oh my goodness, Cindy, you really do need to put a little bit of work in to balance. I never recognized that I didn't have good balance. I would have to say right now, in thinking about it, right? Sometimes I kind of bump into the walls every once in a while. Sometimes when I'm riding my bike, I kind of tip over, hit the curb, and fall over and stuff. Every once in a while, nothing where I'm going to get seriously hurt or anything, but I could if I have bad balance. So, balance is something that I really need to practice, and doing Tai Chi will strengthen my balance. But first, I'm going to have to do those Karate Kid moves, right? Because that really makes you topsy turvy, right? And so, the course of the day when I shut my videos down after a while, and I was washing the dishes, and I was reminded, washing the dishes was one of my father's favorite things to do. And I'm sure Tammy was with me and saw this live show that I did when I was talking about um, Dr. Sperry, the gentleman who was a neuropsychologist or neurosurgeon. What was he? A neuroscientist. That's what he was. I made some notes here, so I'm glad it was right up at the top. Because in 1981, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in his discovery of the split brain theory, right? It's the split brain is actually an operation where they actually sever the cords that attach the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain. And I'm like, oh my goodness, maybe that's the problem I have. Maybe I have split brain, right? But it turned out that you would have to have a very like so serious you probably wouldn't live, right? If you actually got an external um, injury to that area, right? Like when you go in, you have a surgery, it's like it's very delicate surgery to even mess with that, right? But it's a surgery that they do to stop people from having epilepsy. And then, oh, okay, so I don't have split brain energy or split brain syndrome, they call it, right? And the only reason that I thought maybe because the idea that in the split brain injury, that your right side of your brain and your left side of the brain, see how I did that, left side and right side, because I had to think as I was doing that, right, that they don't properly communicate with each side. They're like two separate beings when you have that. But he was studying people who had the operation to cure their their split brain operation that messes with their dexterity because the left side can't see properly and the right side cannot speak properly, right? But the idea was over time, because the brain is so malleable, that it's so smart, that it can actually heal itself. And he found that people who've had this operation can actually seem like they've been repaired in what they do. So the operation doesn't affect them in any mentality like that. And I thought, oh, is that ever interesting? It's kind of like that idea how us as humans, we actually see things upside down, but the brain actually switches it properly for us, right? So that we can see properly. Otherwise, if it didn't, we'd be seeing everything upside down, right? So it's kind of that idea. So it's kind of like two different beings, but somehow the brain has learned to not heal itself, because you can't heal it if you don't have that tendon in between that attaches the two. I mean, if it's gone, it's gone. But it kind of adapts and it conquers and it finds a way, right? And I thought that was really interesting. But I was curious, about, if like the football players or the hockey players or children who have had abuse in their life, if, right, or shaking baby syndrome, right, that could have this severed tendon in their brain, which would make them have split brain syndrome. And Gemini said, no, right? You'd have to have a very serious accident that you probably wouldn't even survive, because in order to get that deep, it would have to be a very serious operation. Okay, before I go any further, Tammy's yapping, so I just want to see what she's saying. Um, in fact, yesterday I rethought it. I want to do it outside too, Cindy. I do not like to do exercises inside the house. I love exercising outside, walks and meditations, easy hiking, Nothing strenuous. Yeah, I don't believe in high impact exercise. We all appreciate the big football players and everything like that, but they have such short careers because of their injuries. It's like the wrestlers and the hockey players. That's why they get paid so much. It's because their career is over when they are still young adults, right? And that's the truth there. So I'm a true believer. Plus, that high impact exercise, it cause stretch marks in the arm if you're doing weightlifting and stuff, right? Stretch marks were never my thing. I like just the right. I had enough of them when I was 311 pounds, right? And I would prefer that all that work, right? I had some plastic surgery to have that all taken care of. I don't want to be getting into that anymore. And especially, when they're fresh, they're all discolored, they're all purple and red. And yeah, no, so low impact. And maybe that's just my excuse because I don't like exercising, right? But I find my own way because I know it's important and I know it's beneficial, right? So I do the low impact. I do the biking, the riding, the walking, and the hiking. I'm good with that. But I thought because of my love for nature that I would find something that I could do in the parks or I could do up on the roof, right? Or when I go camping, that I could have these beautiful landscapes that I could do tai chi. I thought it would be something enjoyable, something I could add into my life. But of course, it took me down the rabbit hole again, coming back to Dr. Speary. And not only that, he was mentioned to me in some content again today, which kind of seemed a little fluky in that. And, in understanding that, it wasn't a possibility that I had that split brain syndrome, that my two sides were just not communicating properly together. And of course, it got jogged for the fact that I didn't have good balance today in practicing my Karate Kid moves, right? So I kind of went back into it a little bit, right? And I found it very interesting because when I was washing the dishes again, because you like to meditate, I find things come to me when I contemplate, right? And I contemplate when I wash dishes. I contemplate because it's kind of a boring, monotonous chore. You've done it so many times, it's nice and easy. But I was thinking, of the things that I do in my life that, because the whole idea, because no, you can't have split brain syndrome if you haven't split that membrane that keeps the two sides separate. But trauma, right? Football players, shaking baby syndrome is a big one. You lose 11% of your cognitive function. And, this word floats around, in the topics that I study and stuff, but I haven't delved into the cognitive stuff yet, right? So I thought I would do a little bit of Googling because, in understanding that washing dishes was one of my father's favorite things to do. And it's because it's in the relation that when you have these cognitive issues, I did some Googling, I right, talked to Gemini a little bit, did a little bit of research, and cognitive therapy is very important. And it's something I've been doing all along, but thinking it's motivation and inspiration and working in emotions and mindset. This is what I'm thinking, right? But no, cognitive therapy is something I've been doing all along, but I've never delved into the topic, right? It's really, really odd. But when I delved into it, I come to understand all those exercises that I like to do in cognitive therapy, because when I asked Gemini, I says, well, in shaking baby syndrome and trauma and these sports injuries that hurt the brain, like, is there things that you can do, seeing that, the brain is really good at repairing itself, maybe not repairing itself, but learning to adapt and conquer and making themselves adaptable again, like the patients who do actually have that membrane taken out. And they said 11% of our cognitive capability is kind of ruined from these experiences that we have, right? These injuries, not the removal, but the injuries. And I went, oh my goodness, 11% is so high. That's such a high number, right? So I'm doing a little bit of research on cognitive behavioral therapy. And just in case none of you guys know anything, I know Tammy's all over this already. Cognitive therapy is a structured, action oriented form of psychotherapy that focuses on identifying and changing unhelpful patterns of thinking and behavior rooted in the area that our perceptions dictate our emotions and actions. It equips you with practical skills to challenge negative thoughts and develop healthier coping strategies. And I went, oh my goodness, that's what I've been doing all this time. And I didn't know that there was an actual category, that they had a name for it. I just thought of it as motivation, inspiration, working in emotions, and mindset. That's just what I thought it was. To come to understand, now I still got a lot of work to do, because now I've munched onto it. My curiosity took hold, and this idea of those serendipities and breadcrumbs and clues that come across my path, whether it's stumbling around and breaking my ornament, or having Dr. Sperry show up in my content to gain today, and then to be curious enough to ask questions and come up with this, like, Cindy, like, you should have known what this was, that there was an actual name for what you're doing. Cognitive therapy. And I just like shake my head, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be doing this my entire life and not be able to be at the top of the pile. And that's the truth. And I don't know why I'm beating myself up for this. I'm not going to university, right? I'm not going for that degree, right? But in being able to have conversations and even to be able to do that work for myself, kind of makes sense that this is something I should know about, should have known about, and will know about, guaranteed, like a pit bull, the piece of raw meat in my mouth. And then again, put me back to this idea. Well, that's why my dad loved washing dishes, because the idea, and taking my notes, right? It's that teamwork with yourself, right? It's getting your right side of the brain and your left side of the brain to team up and work together. That's where those low impact love exercises that I do does for me. Walking, they say, is one of the best things that you can do to have the right side of your brain and your left side of the brain to work together, right? Your right side of your body, your left side of the body teaming up. When you're washing dishes, you're holding a dish. That dish is what you're rinsing that dish. The other hand, you got your scrubby and you're scrubbing the, it's teamwork from one side of your body to the left side of the body. That's the whole idea of cognitive therapy, that you're retraining yourself to be a partner, a true partner for yourself, like riding my bike, right? Another good one that I was thinking about maybe taking up, because I used to do it when I was younger, is juggling. There's another one that you can do in cognitive therapy because you got to work together, right? And remember, the left side sees and are no, the left side can't see and the right side can't speak. So you're trying to teach them, because the right side of the brain can still give orders, right? Because it's a bodily function. That's why it says, like, you got to feel your feelings, right? That you have to, because that's the way that it communicates, right? That's the way that it communicates. And then the left side follows the orders, right? It's kind of really cool. But that bike riding that I do, the swimming, the walking, the hiking, that is teamwork for myself. And, in washing the dishes, my right side and my left side are working together. And at the same time, in that contemplation, I'm hanging out with I'm thinking, the right side, right? Right? But the left side's doing it too, but they do it as different, almost like different personalities, different beings, separate, right? So I thought that was cool. And then I thought, okay, so if you're healing, or if I'm healing, that 11% that kind of got jiggled around when, I was a kid, right? Lots of kids come from dynamic families, right? And shaking baby syndrome is a serious problem out in the world, right? That parents, when they have a hard time controlling their emotions, even for myself, screaming babies, that's a hard one for me, right? It will get me going every time, right? So, and not saying that I'd be shaking babies or anything like that, but I know how I feel when the babies are screaming. So I can imagine how a mom would be when they're listening to their baby screaming, 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 when they're putting them down for a nap, or they can't figure out what the baby wants, because obviously the baby doesn't know how to talk, doesn't know, my diaper needs to be changed. I want my bottle. I need a nap. I got a tummy ache. I need to be burped, right? The baby's the crying is the only way to get those expressions out, right? And so I could see and I can appreciate how frustrating it would be for a mother. And, not everybody has the capacity. They should, right? But you can't blame in the world that we live in, mothers have a certain extent of capacity. Sometimes babies happen when maybe they shouldn't have had babies, right? And that's the truth too. But these things do happen, and we lose 11% of that capacity to work with both sides equally. And I thought, okay, fine, like if you do these practices, the Tai Chi, the juggling, the washing the dishes, going for walks, hiking, bike riding, these things where you're actually getting the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain working together. Now, you see, it was the first time I got that right, because I was talking about the right side and the left brain. I was going right side, left side, right? Because it's not great communicating when I'm just sitting in a chair. I'm not working with myself, right? So I thought it was very interesting content, but I was thinking, okay, fine. You are on top. Your brain is smart. Your brain has adapted and conquered and found a way to communicate properly with the other side, even though there might be a percentage that's missing there or was missing there. But is it possible that you could increase it by 11%? And that's what I'm interested about, right? If I got myself some tennis balls, and I won't do it near my preciouses, but get those tennis balls and start playing with the tennis balls, right? And really working with myself. What could I do? Could I have my own little experiment? Like I said, I'm not going back to university, right? This Dr. Sperry has had over 35 awards and honors for the work that he has done in his lifetime, including getting the Nobel Peace Prize in split brain therapy, which I think is just super cool. And it answers a lot of questions, because a lot of questions that get put out there, they credit it to other aspects of themselves, right? When in actuality, they can give credit to themselves in that partnership with themselves. And I found it super, super interesting. I made all kinds of notes here, but yeah, I've got to work on that balance, because, I've got to practice in my living room in the moment in the mornings, before I get into the lessons, that I will actually spend a little time maybe over there and just practice my Karate Kid moves, right? In that balancing. And then, take a couple of lessons in the Tai Chi, right? The give and the receive. And then loading all my fluids down into my feet to learn to walk Tai Chi. That's another one I was learning today, right? I'm doing baby steps. I'm starting right at the beginning. I'm not going in and I'm just not going to look at it as if I'm going to be an expert in it anytime soon, because I'm just going to do things. So I do everything in baby steps, and it serves me well. And I think, for a lot of people who don't have that capacity, that's the way they need to do it, in the baby steps, right? Because it still gives you that confidence, and it gives you that sense of accomplishment. That is, so you guys know, accomplishment is does it for me every time. It'll put a smile on my face. It'll make a bad day better. It'll make me feel like I'm moving forward, right? Accomplishing is everything for me. But, I'm not going 100 miles an hour. I'm not overexerting myself in what I do, because I want to love. And me and Tammy are going to stop here for a second, and we're going to send some good cheer to the fire truck and the ambulance that are heading to their destination, that they get there and knock on the door and it turns out to be a false alarm, and they can turn around and go right back to the station. Yeah, so I found it really, really interesting, um, because the brain does have a great capacity to heal itself, and that's the proof right there. It comes straight from a Nobel Peace Prize winner, right? And I think that's pretty cool. And what's even more cooler is the fact that in this day and age that we're in right now, that I have those answers at my fingertips. If I have the question, the answer's there. You know, I use Gemini every single day. I don't ask them those great universal questions or anything, because I believe it's inside of us already. And yes, I take in a lot of different perspectives, right? But at the same time, I trust Gemini. And, I don't use Chat GPT. But for those of you who do, great. But I would hate to have my bubble blown because Gemini is fact, right? And it's not to say that they don't get anything wrong, because I told you my story about my Napoleon, who is made by Samuel the imposter from Paris. But, you know, Google Lens keeps arguing with me and says, no, that's the Mason Company, right? And I take pictures of the mark on the bottom and everything, and they still argue with me. No, that's Mason, Cindy. And I go, no, it's not, right? I have a book, I have done my research, and that is Samuel the Imposter from Paris, 1871. I even have the date, right? And you go online and you won't find another one, right? That's how rare they are, because he took so much pride in his work. Going trailing off here a little bit, but he took so much pride in his work that he would steal Mason's work, right? And he would use better materials, better techniques, better artistry, because he wanted his work to be better than Mason. And Mason was the best of the best. And if he could outdo Mason, what did that make him? The best of the best as an imposter, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. So I know Gemini doesn't get everything right, right? But at the same time, having my perspectives, like, crashing the party, right? Stomping out the fire, right? Taking the pin to that balloon and popping, you know, it it at the same time, there are things that I believe to be true, right? But they're true for me. That doesn't mean that they're true for everybody. Everybody has a right to make their movement in their own perspective, their own beliefs, right? That's what your perspective is. Your perspective is belief. And each one of us has that right to believe in what they believe in, right? And who am I to take that pin and poke somebody's balloon in that? And that's why I don't ask these, right? Of course, cognitive therapy, that's an important question, but it's not life altering for me, right? If I got a different answer, I delve in and take my lesson, right? But it wouldn't be rubbing up against my beliefs like sandpaper. I am willing, right? I promised myself that I would be willing to be course corrected, that I would be willing to be open to somebody else's perspective, right? Because I pick through perspectives. That's what I do. It's like an appetizer platter that I get to choose from, right? But that appetizer platter of mine is going to be different than your appetizer platter, depending on your experience, depending on your beliefs, your culture, your religion, your political ideas, your familial ideas, right? The people that you hang out with at work and after work, those dynamic families that we grow up in, right? Everybody has an idea. Everybody has something to say. We live in a narcissistic society where everybody believes their own truth. But there's no reason you can't express it, but you just can't like shove that down somebody's throat, as the be all to end all, right? That's where the problems arise from, because each one of us is a unique. Each one of us made up of different ingredients in a different recipe. And if you throw one ingredient in there as a truth, right? And you put a half a cup of salt in your chocolate cake, it's going to ruin your cake. Okay, I don't know if that was a good analogy, but that's all I've got for you. Okay, let me come into the comments here. See how far I go back. Um, Congratulations, Cindy, on your new step to learning and exercising and starting something new. That's awesome. That's the idea. Once you get into a comfort zone, and I find you can tell you're in a comfort zone because you can feel the boredom set in, right? The boredom will let you know right off the hop that you've hit a comfort zone, right? And of course, entertainment will kill that uh, insight, right? Because when you're entertained, you're not paying anything attention to anything except to what's entertaining you or to that headline news, right? I gotta keep that separate because that's not entertainment, right? I wish they had a news channel that was just good stuff, right? But they don't. Maybe on one of those pay per view channels, maybe they have something like that. But yeah, as far as I know, I don't watch TV, so I don't know. Another crystal, a big one, Cindy, will come to your pathway. I feel it. I'm always picking up crystals and rocks and stuff, and yeah, I have lots and lots and lots. And I actually have 3 Safeway bags of rocks in my walk-in closet, but I'm waiting to get a tumbler so I can tumble and polish them, right? What I'll do with them afterwards, I don't know. But they were beautiful, beautiful rocks that I picked up in my different adventures. Lake Superior had the most beautiful rocks because Lake Superior just tumbles rocks on its own. So pretty much all they need to be done is to polish them. But yeah, pretty pretty nice. I like my rocks and crystals. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some more digging, and right, maybe putting together a crystal digging retreat in Thunder Bay. I think that would be really cool. That we could get together as a group, and there's a beautiful provincial park not 40 minutes away, and we could camp and hang out on the lake and go for walks on the trails, go digging for crystals and get to know each other and have chats and stuff. But yeah, YouTube videos, Tammy, check them out for Tai Chi. My oldest daughter knows Taekwondo and has a brown belt that's under the black belt. And my ex husband knows and does kickboxing and knows and does karate too. I love karate and different ones. Yeah, not my thing. I always thought that was like a guy's sport, right? But yeah, that's actually quite interesting that your daughter knows taekwondo. That's cool. So I decided to look into a type of karate that I could do and use as meditating too, while tai chi, right? That would be perfect for that. That would be perfect for that. Yes, I think contemplating is great too. Don't get me wrong. I think contemplating too, Cindy, because I think a lot myself, and it's not all meditating. Yeah. I have my own way of meditating, right? When I sit in my camping chair and just space out on a beautiful sunset or watch the fish jump out of the lakes or I contemplate too when I'm walking the trails in the provincial parks, because I'm just there in the moment, and I'm not usually in my head when I'm doing my provincial parks. That's my time, right? So usually it's an empty brain, right? And I just allow what to come in, what allows to come in. But today everything was coming at me. It was just one serendipity after another. It was pretty cool. Not only that, right? But remember what I said? I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to make a note tomorrow. I'm gonna see if I can find some balancing videos, right?" And then, it was just before I was going live, so I thought I would just go into my YouTube and see what was suggested to me. And the first thing it was the second video suggested to me was in how to properly walk doing Tai Chi. And it was all about balance. And I just like, right? Like serendipities and breadcrumbs, and just it's like I'm so in sync now with YouTube and Google that things just come to me when I need them. It's like magic sometimes, I think. Okay. That's great, Cindy, about your learning and doing cognitive therapy. When I was a direct severe care aide and a special ed teacher, we used this on regular basis daily to help our clients. Isn't that strange, right? And I've been in this for years, and right, and the word has floated around, right? The word has floated around, but I've never, up until today, actually delved into the topic. And then it just turned out that's what I've been doing all this time. I'm such a silly girl sometimes, right? But it got done one way or another. But I'm glad I have a title to apply to what I've been doing now. You're right, Cindy. Please do not beat yourself up. You were doing good and doing great. You got this. Oh, thank you. Hey, Cindy, we love our karate movies. We can wax on and wax off. Oh, there's one I could do tomorrow, Tammy. I could do the wax on and wax off. Yes, the cognitive therapy and the cognitive thinking and cognitive behavior therapy can increase for the good and get better and be positive. Yeah, it's so amazing. Yeah, I'm just going to be delving into it for the next few days at the very least, and to see how deep I can get into it and how it can hold my interest. But the idea is a game. Once you start getting bored of things, that's when you add something more to your plate, because now you've become comfortable in it, right? It's that idea, get out of your comfort zone, right? You got that. You're down back. Maybe you're not an expert like me, but, right? There are people out there not even trying, right? And that's the truth, and that's something to be proud of. And accomplishment is accomplishment. And but that idea, right, instead of going for the couch or remote control, bring something else onto the table. Find a new interest. It might not stick, but give it a try, right? Maybe you won't like it, but maybe you will. Maybe you'll find your lifelong passion. Maybe I found something that I can do when I'm in the campsites all by myself. And when I go on my trips, I go in September. I'm usually the only ones in the entire campground out there tenting it. And it's beautiful to have that space for myself, have the world and Mother Nature for myself. But to be able to stand at a lakeside, right, in the morning and do some Tai Chi and get myself limber for that big hike that I'm going to do, right? That just might be everything everything. Um, I have always loved rocks as a little kid too, Cindy. Rocks actually, Tammy, have been fairly new, rocks and crystals for me. I was always bringing home doodads. Like I got trays, well, you can't see behind me and stuff, but I've got acorns and I've got, pine cones and I've got pieces of wood and sticks and rocks and stuff. Like I just love nature, right? I've got books with leaves pressed into them. Like I could just go on and on about the little things that I pick up along the way. But that real passion for rocks and crystals woke in me when I first woke up to some of these ideas. It's the same thing with the dragons, right? Dragons, those serendipities, those breadcrumbs. How come it imprinted on me so deep, so solidly, right? It's curious. I love my dragons. I think I'm up to 25 different dragon figurines, right? I even have my desk mouse is a mouse pad is a dragon, right? And I've had that for years, but you can't see them. But if I turn this a little bit, see, you can see a dragon. You can see a dragon up there, right? Well, I got two dragons, but the blue one on the bottom you can't see so well. But if I really turn it around, I got dragons all over there, and on the light there, sitting on where I knocked my crystal down, I've got a baby dragon. And then I've got my house dragon. This is my big dragon, right? He's the boss. He's in charge of everything. And then I have my phoenix on my fireplace. And then I have another dragon. I got dragons all over the place. But the dragons too are something that are been fairly new in my life, right? And I love them, right? It's that idea that, if it interests you, indulge your curiosity, right? Don't delve in too deep. You can drive yourself crazy as to why I have crystals and rocks all over the house now, or why I delve into the dragons, right? But those answers will just naturally, right, reveal themselves. Actually, the dragons are part of um, this idea of Sophia. I've been delving in a little bit about Sophia and Mary Magdalene, right? And Piscus Sophia, actually. And it's all tied into wisdom. And I went, oh, how cool, right? Because I like wisdom. I would consider myself, after my experience today, to say that I have that much wisdom, but I'm not going to beat myself up. It came to me. I got it now. I have an opportunity to delve into a new subject, and maybe not, for sure, not a new subject. It's something I've been doing the whole time, but I was just labeling it something else. And I'm not even sure if I'm going to call it cognitive therapy, but in that perspective that somebody else holds, right, in their beliefs, when I'm having a conversation and I recognize that they'll understand it as cognitive therapy, right? They might not get it as mindset or motivation or inspiration, right? Or working in emotions, right? And it may find it to be a little bit less triggering in the conversation. So it's a useful tool no matter what. Okay, let's come down here. Oh, you're going to read about it in the Tai Chi. I'm not sure. I'm just going to delve into it, right? Get my balance going first off. I don't want to be breaking any more of my precious. I learned my lesson today, right? It fell on the floor. It was so sad to go get my broom and my dustpan and make sure I got all those little splinters and stuff. I don't walk around the house in my bare feet, right? I want to be doing hiking trails when I'm 80 years old. My feet are so important to me, and I know what it's like to have fasciitis because I had fasciitis in my 40s, and I said never again. And I wear like shoe inserts, and I wear Keen brand shoes with the nice and wide toes and the good grip on the soles. Like, I'm very protective of my feet. I don't want to. Right? I don't want to be a walker lady. And there are lots of walker ladies. No offense to the walker ladies. But if there's anything I could do to put that off, that's what I'm going to do. Right? Okay. Ha ha ha. I have done some of those nature things through the years to rocks and dead wood and seashells. Oh, I forgot the seashells, pine cones, leaves, the list goes on. That's so very cool, Cindy, about your dragons and collecting them. That's very interesting. Yeah, it is interesting, especially when it was never a thing. The closest I ever got was, when I was a little kid, I liked Huff and Puff. Other than that, dragons have never been in my life, in any way. Like, I understand now, like, there's a show on television or Netflix or one of those channels, um, Vikings or Game of Thrones, and they're actually or not dinosaurs, dragons in those shows. I never even got to see those because I had gotten rid of my TV long before those television shows even came on TV. So I haven't even had an opportunity to be influenced by that. And I could tell the dinosaurs are getting popular now, only for the fact that they're so expensive when you're looking for the figurines and stuff. Oh, and there's some more dinosaurs. I have that candlestick up there. You can't see them because they're so tiny, but I've got four little baby dragons on the candlestick up on the top shelf there. But yeah, I love my dragons. Okay, you guys. I caught up on the comments, so I'm going to take that as my cue to get into a word, you guys. And we'll call it a night. And it might be pertinent to the conversation. Sometimes it just works out that way. This is 54 powerful words, you guys. Words that inspire, right? Words that help us to put our life into action. Words that give us a moment to contemplate or to reflect on or go, oh my goodness, I was just thinking about that. What a serendipity that is, right? Okay, you guys, let's get into the word. Hope everybody is having a good week. We're coming to the end of the work week. If you're a Monday, Friday kind of guy or Monday to Friday kind of girl, hope your weekend is absolutely amazing. If you want to pop in, I do this 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I also have another live show that I do, which is more of a community show, which is on Sunday night. And I usually keep that one pretty light, right? It's an having conversations and spending time with the people who've been hanging out with me, right? So it's we're not going deep into these conversations that I do Monday, Friday. Okay, you guys, here we go. Let's grab a card. The word for today. I like this. We were talking a little bit about this yesterday. Thumbnail. Happiness happens when you love what you're doing. And that's 100% the truth. Like I said, I'm not going back to university. And I'm not sure, even if I had that opportunity, if I knew I was going to live to be 114 years old, if I knew for sure that I could give away 6 years of my life and apply myself in university if I would even want to. Because, again, coming from that dynamic family, that upbringing that I had, the experiences that I had in school, those triggers in my hypervigilance, and even though I am much better than I was when I was a kid, would I be able to apply myself in school? And if I could apply myself in school, would I enjoy it? Would I love what I do? I love what I do. Like, I have so much fun with this, and yet at the same time, it's so beneficial to my life. And you never know, in sharing it out there to the world, that it might be beneficial to somebody else somewheres down the road, right? That it's important for me to love what I'm doing. I have had so many jobs in my life that were just there to put the roof over my head. I had jobs where I would walk in the door at the end of my shift and I would bawl my eyes out because I hated my job so much. I would come in 5 minutes late to my job, though my only claim to fame is I've never missed a day of work in my entire life. That's my only claim to fame when it comes to work. Well, I was a good employee, but that was an impact thing, right? But to not be on time for work was a procrastination, coming in at the skin of my teeth right when I was supposed to start because I didn't like my job because it was miserable. I had a lot of those jobs, right? And you know what? In having those jobs did not last. Sometimes I stayed a little bit longer lots of times I stayed a little bit longer than I should have, only out of the necessity of keeping the roof over my head. But when I stepped into a job that I loved, right, I'd stay forever, right? As long as I loved it, I would stay forever. Once I started getting bored, you add something extra to your plate. If you love it, you add something extra to the plate to keep that interest and that curiosity and that passion for what you're doing just going, right? But if you found that your job is sucking your life out of you, right? Put something on your plate, like a new resume. And in your free time, I know applying for work was never my favorite thing. It was one of the scariest things I ever did. I hated interviews. But if I had to, I would. If I needed to get out of a job that I didn't have fun at, that I didn't love, that I didn't work with good people. And usually it wasn't the people, it wasn't my peers, right? It was I don't know what it was. It was the energy, you guys. Where it came from all kinds of places, right? You read the energy, you don't love your job, it's time to move forward, right? Get out of your comfort zone. Okay, you guys. Happiness is when you love what you're doing. You guys, that's all I've got for you tonight. Cindy, you go to the University of Life and have a master's degree or a doctorate degree. Well, that's a good one. Maybe I'll do just that. You guys, thank you so much for coming in. I'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Central, if you want to come and hang out with us. If not, I have another live show on Sunday night. I take Saturdays off. Sunday night, I will be back. And other than that, I'm here Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Central. Guys, have a great night.